Good morning, everyone. My name is Robin Bear. I'm with Whiteboard to Boardroom. I want to thank you for attending our webinar today. I'm going to turn it over to Jim Baxendale, who will introduce our presenters. Jim?
Thanks, Robin. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Whiteboard to Boardroom Technology Snapshot webinar series. I'm Jim Baxendale with the UMKC Innovation Center Whiteboard to Boardroom program. For some of you may be new to our webinar series, the technologies presented by our institutional partners are generally available for licensing to form new startups, new product opportunities for established companies, or in some cases are newly formed startups seeking CEOs, capital, strategic partners, prototyping resources, board members, or advisors, mentors. Presentations are generally 10 to 15 minutes in length. However, today we've extended that allotted time for the pandemic tent because it's so timely with what's happening out there today with COVID-19. So we have a few minutes at each presentation for questions. You can use the chat feature if you like. The presentations are recorded, and we'll send you a link to the presentations in a few days. We encourage you to share this with your colleagues if they may have an interest in these technologies, so feel free to do so. And you can contact me directly if you like for introductions or to get some requests for further information. So today we have two presentations, the first by physicians with the University of Kansas Medical Center. And to lead us off on the pandemic tent, this is developed by the physicians at the University of Kansas Medical Center. The pandemic tent is a novel, portable, single patient, negative pressure environment. So we'll go ahead and get started. And I believe it's Jared and Tim presenting the pandemic tent. So if you'd like to get started, we'll go ahead.
Absolutely. So first of all, I wanted to say thanks for having us, and we're really excited to be here. I'm Dr. Jared Staub, and I am one of the physicians from Contagion Solutions. And today we're going to talk about the tent, which, if you remember anything from this, it's a portable, affordable, negative pressure environment. Next slide, please. So a little bit about us. We're comprised of 5 physicians. We're on the front lines and recently found ourselves to be inventors and entrepreneurs in the fight against COVID. Between us, we've got a combined 70 years of experience taking care of patients from, that baby's first cry all the way to a patient's last breath, over 100 publications. And we serve as leaders on numerous national committees. And so our team is comprised of Dr. Brent Barta, who is a cardiac anesthesiologist, Dr. Bridget Flynn, who is an anesthesiologist, intensivist, and researcher extraordinaire, and helping us navigate the FDA process. Dr. Tim Kraus, a leader and really our steward of our lead program at KU. Dr. Jay Noctegal, who leads us both locally, regionally, and nationally in lots of different societies involved with anesthesiology. So really great group of people, and we've grown together. So next slide, please. So a little bit about the inspiration for this. Necessity is the mother of all invention. And so what does it mean to be on the front line? And a little bit of why we did this. Late March, we had the stories coming out of Wuhan. We had the stories coming out of Italy. And then it gets closer in Washington and New York. And then it finally starts hitting our doorstep. And I was in my job as an intensivist. I was called in to help staff a recently opened intensive care unit on a floor that was just a regular telemetry ward or floor, and it was converted into an ICU. And as we, new nurses, new physicians, new facilities, and the threat of COVID, all just trying to do our best. And at 2 a.m, we were taking a patient prone, and COVID patients tend to have just a lot of secretions. And a very green but well-meaning respiratory therapist ended up disconnecting the circuit. And out of that, we all saw splatter on our face shields. And instantly, without knowing, how bad is this? Am I going to get sick? Am I going to take it home to my family? What are the next steps? The things that sort of go through your mind. So fast forward, after my night shift, I'm heading home, and it's actually my birthday, and I know on the other side of that door when I open it are my kids, my wife, ready to happy birthday, give a hug. And so you sit there and you ask yourself, do I go in? Do I give them a hug? Do I go somewhere else? What do I do? So it was in that garage that our sort of frustrations with, the resources that we had and the COVID situation, out of that came our first prototype. So next slide, please. So we're no stranger to epidemics. We're no stranger to pandemics. The most recent large Ebola outbreak in 2014, still 62% of people died. And as we see on the left side of your screen, influenza is still a threat every year. And so these things keep happening. Next slide, please. Moving on to coronavirus, we have SARS, we have MERS, and this is all within the last 20 years. And now, we have COVID-19. And so a lot of these, especially zoonotic infections, are just going to increase as we expand into territories that we haven't been before. And the power of COVID, you'll see in the bottom left, this is a graphic from Fitbit of people, of their steps, literally their steps. And early on in COVID, we actually see that the world stopped. They literally stopped moving. So this is a big problem. Next slide, please. $11.5 trillion is roughly where a lot of people are landing on economic damages. And it's estimated that just $260 billion could have been spent to prevent this. And so we would like to help make that $260 billion go farther. We'd like to help be more prepared and help mitigate this. And, directly from the CDC. So we can't predict when the next one's coming. We know one is coming. And pathogens can travel from a remote village to our cities in 36 hours. So it is upon us to do better. Next slide, please. Now, the problem is multifactorial, and it starts off with dangerous pathogens. These recurrent threats, newly emergent diseases, yearly flu, these come around and they cause a lot of problems. And particularly with COVID, we end up increasing cost. And the cost to healthcare delivery is immense. We can't convert every room to a negative pressure environment. PPE is expensive, and it's hard to come by. So when we have increased cost, it puts strains on margins for health systems. Again, the PPE, the decreased turnover and throughput, because we're waiting for rooms to cycle enough air to mitigate aerosolization. Along with this fear comes trust. A lot of patients are sitting at home. Do I have my heart attack at home? My arm's numb. When do I go in? I'm too scared to go in. And so this decreased volume only compounds that problem, leading to, the last financial disasters. We've got hospitals closing, healthcare workers are furloughed, and, the global economy collapses. So it's a really, really big problem. Next slide, please. So, we don't want anybody to panic, and we think that we've got a great solution in the form of a portable device that's affordable, and provides a negative pressure environment, keeping healthcare workers safe. And so we've come up with a device that ships flat, can be deployed quickly and rapidly. And it's something that by affordable, we hope to decrease the losses of decreased throughput, and then again, keep people safe from aerosolized and airborne pathogens. Next slide, please. So our device is unique in that it solves a problem that previously really didn't have a reasonable solution. It's been rigorously tested, testing as we are currently in the EUA application process, but really our goal was to get to 510K full FDA clearance. So our testing has been set up to achieve those goals. With this being a novel device, we believe we will be first to market. And I can't say enough about the authenticity as far as, this really was necessity of, necessity really just got us going, and we're really, really excited about it. So next slide, please. So this is the tent. As we can see, it is transparent material, so we can see through. It has dual ports with HEPA filtration that's hooked up to hospital suction, portable suction, suction in an ambulance to suck out airborne viral particles. We have the ability to administer oxygen and connect to all of our devices that we use in anesthesia, as well as other procedures. And we also have multiple access ports so we can get to the patient in a timely manner. Next slide, please. And we're going to go ahead and play just a little visual with info about this. If we could hit play there, it's embedded, but for whatever reason hasn't started.
I'm not showing an animation on my side.
Okay. I wonder, do I have screen access to hit there's a little arrow in the middle to play.
Here we go. Maybe I'll try this. Give me one more second.
Or sometimes if we hit the screen.
Let's see.
There we go.
There we go.
Thank you.
I'm not sure it's working for me.
Okay. I wonder.
Working on a device called the tent, which is designed to be a portable.
If there's a lot of, we can skip to the next if there's issues with it.
Third time's a charm. Here we go.
All right.
We're working on a device called the tent, which is designed to be a portable and disposable negative pressure environment.
Robin, I'm not getting any audio. I don't know if we can increase that, or if there are a little bit of technical issues, we can advance to next slide, whichever you prefer.
We can just maybe narrate as we go along, just showing you the package size there. You saw it packs flat, sets up in less than 45 seconds. They're about 35 seconds. I wish you could hear Dr. Nottigal's excellent narration, but we're just describing what it looks like to put our hands through the ports there. We have some smoke testing that was done as well. That's where the filtration system hooks up to with the suction. That's the neck seal right there.
Yeah.
Our testing was done by some of the certification companies that KU employs to test their ICU rooms. So local companies P1 and Accutech, who do all the, like we said, certification of the negative pressure ICU rooms. We use them. So this is just showing some of the testing they did.
Disease, and so many of our procedures are
Can you hear that?
Yes.
So there we go. All right, next slide, please. Thank you. So, as far as it's great that we have a product, but how do we really get this? How do we really get this out there? And so the business model, we want to work with hospitals, we want to work with EMS systems, we want to work with governments on disaster response and rapid containment. So next slide, please. Now, hospitals are going broke, and we talked a little bit about the decrease in margins, but this is, a recession where, ironically, healthcare is not immune, and we're actually furloughing our workers in the middle of a pandemic. So it's almost going to war with and firing your soldiers before. So it's kind of a really devastating time. Next slide, please. So just a word on Throughput and the number 12. And this is a picture of an operating room. We've got multiple personnel in there wearing various forms of PPE. And so how this usually works is nurses, scrub techs are setting up a room. They've got PPE on and available. And then the patient and the anesthesiology team now enter the room. And as soon as the patient is ready to go to sleep, all other ancillary personnel step outside, they get rid of their PPE, and they wait. And, we then insert a breathing tube or perform an aerosolizing procedure. And so that takes about 2 to 3 minutes. And then after that, we have a wait, and the wait time varies by different facilities. But basically, according to CDC guidelines, in order to help mitigate the spread of an aerosolized pathogen, we have to have the airflow in whatever room circulate 12 times. And so at KU right now, that's 6 minutes at the start of each procedure and 6 minutes at the end of each procedure when we remove a breathing tube or so forth. And then, you add on 2 to 3 minutes of kind of logistical time to get the patient safe, either intubated or extubated. And so we're looking at 18 minutes of time added on to each surgery. And at the cost of $40 to $60 per minute of OR time, we can see how this adds up at the end of the day, decreasing throughput and increasing cost. So next slide, please. Governments. So we've got a humanitarian hospital ship on the left and an aircraft carrier on the right, both taken out by COVID. So we were unable to deliver humanitarian aid to our own country. And also the, flagship, the banner of national security was sidelined. I mean, this is a big problem. So we hope to work with the government as well with this device to help decrease the spread. Next slide, please. Finally, working with EMS and ambulance service, I got my start in healthcare, working on an ambulance, and you never know what you're going to run into. And, I think if we did a show of hands on who would call 911 and ask for half the service, I don't think anybody would be too excited about that. But, this was so dangerous that paramedics stopped doing CPR. And it's not even because they were, wanting to protect themselves, but so many were falling ill that if they continued at that rate, we wouldn't even have an EMS service. So just a devastating problem, and something that a rapidly deployable, portable, affordable device could help fix. And also, on Throughput, the back of an ambulance is kind of like your grandpa's tool bin. It's got all these nooks and crannies and everything else, and it takes time to terminally clean that. And so we hope that this provides a solution to decrease aerosolized pathogen throughout that ambulance and help them get back onto service as well. Next slide, please. So where are we now? We have a provisional patent and formal patent submitted. We have submitted our emergency use with the FDA and are planning on going for full 510K. We have a new partnership with an FDA certified manufacturer that's helping us become even more portable and affordable. And we believe with the changes and cost per unit and quality and portability that we will be in a very, very good spot, and will make the barrier to entry for other entities pretty difficult. So we feel really good about our new partnership. Next slide, please. So, I struggle to say competition or, near peer, but there are similar devices. And we'll just start off with one. The stat enclosure up on the right was a device that was basically a passive barrier without negative pressure, no seal on the patient. And actually, these can increase the risk of aerosolized pathogen. And so this was withdrawn from their EUA status was pulled, with the FDA stating that these barrier devices need to have negative pressure. So definitely something that we're offering. I want to go up to the top left to the CAMIC, which is a rigid structure that requires lots of assembly. It definitely is not portable, not affordable, and does not deploy very easily. So really kind of something not in our space, but has an EUA right now. The bottom two, we'll talk about the NRS AVR 100, which is a device that is really just made for transport. Again, not a great sealing mechanism on the bottom either. And then finally, we have the dome, which is probably the closest, but we see tape, sealing this mannequin, and then we see gloves going into this area. And we've tried a lot of different iterations. We failed forward a lot. And what we've learned is that this tape is not an effective seal. Even if the patient is static, you can imagine bumping around in an ambulance, moving around on an operating room table. And then these gloves are not one size fits all. And the last thing you want to do is mess with a mismatched glove when there's an emergency going on. So really, we definitely feel like we are going to be new to a very exciting place in the market. Next slide, please. So as far as market opportunity, there are millions of EMS calls per year, 48 million surgeries in the US per year with a 3 to 6% projected growth rate. And that honestly might be a little underestimated with, we're finding in COVID survivors a lot of ongoing health problems that will become chronic. There are over 100 million surgeries performed per year internationally. And when you take the surgical volume that happens outside of the operating rooms, that volume doubles. So definitely an opportunity for some market capitalization. Next slide, please. And I want to hand this to Dr. Tim Kraus and Dr. Jay Noctegal to talk about some of our financials.
Great, thank you, Jared. So I know that watching our time, so we'll try to make this streamlined and brief. This just reflects our belief that this can be extremely high value investment that offers incredible growth potential as we look at some of those markets Jared mentioned, like the international market, military, EMS. And so just to give some assumptions on our projections here, this only refers to operating room. It doesn't take into account all the procedural suites across the United States and internationally where our GI labs, all those procedures are performed, echo labs, and so there's immense growth in those areas, but these projections just are focused on the operating rooms. It also shows simply a 9% utilization rate within those operating rooms. So from our experience at KU, we are a fairly conservative facility in that we are donning all the PPE at the highest level for every single operating room case, regardless of that patient's COVID status. So for example, the patient could be COVID negative from literally 2 days ago, and we are still all donning all the PPE to keep everyone safe because of the potential of a false test or of a infection that they've got acquired since their testing came in. But however, about 9%, 10% of the time are cases at KU and across the nation. From our research, we've shown that those patients, a COVID test is either pending or it's positive. So in those situations, we kept our projections to those cases across the United States. So it only reflects a 9% utilization rate across the operating room. And so for our projections at the end of year one, we just predicted a very reasonable growth rate to only reach 50 hospitals across the United States that are comparable in size and scope to KU where we operate right now. So we thought that was a very reasonable and actually pretty conservative estimate to be at 50 hospitals by the end of year 1. And you can see by this graph here for our revenue projections over the next 5 years. By year 1, we actually would essentially turn a profit just by the end of the year, but basically the break-even point. But however, year 2, maintaining that moderate growth rate of just staying with those 50 hospitals while we work on our marketing plan, our refinement of our R&D and manufacturing process, continue to bring our costs down. So even year 2, we maintain consistent at those 50 hospitals. We still return a great profit for potential investors with really a gross of $10 million that second year, and with a net of $3.4 million. And then Dr. Noctegal will go on to describe years 3 through 5 for us.
Thanks, Tim. So apologies for the generality of the slide. You know, my skills as a former CPA are a little rusty, but trying to harken back to those days. After year 2, we still wanted to stay fairly conservative in our projections. And so we forecasted just a 25% growth rate per year in years 3 through 5. And as Dr. Staub and Dr. Kraus mentioned, you know, in our calculations, we've left a lot of potential opportunity out. There are over 6,000 hospitals in the U.S. alone. And so forecasting by the end of year 5, we're looking at being in less than 5% of those hospitals. So there's a lot of untapped market potential there that we certainly want to capture, but we've left out of our forecasting just to show the potential profitability even on a small scale. And then again, this is only looking at OR procedures, and there's double the number of potential procedures out there that could potentially be captured and this device used for. So very conservative estimates, but you can show at the end of year 5 significant profitability, even on a small scale. Next slide, please.
Yep.
And Dr. Staub, go ahead.
Yep. So, you know, the ask, we are 5 physicians in the front line against COVID. We're not experts in taking a product to market, although we do have a lot of tenacity. But we are seeking capital support and a partnership. You know, someone with experience that's gotten a product to market such as this. You know, we're looking for marketing campaign and or boots on the ground, depending on distribution strategy and everything else. So some skills in licensing versus distribution, marketing campaign, going for the full FDA 510K certification. And again, international expansion as well as some R&D for further applications and other iterations that we're focused on. So certainly very excited and open to partnerships and moving forward.
Great. So yeah, we just want to thank you all. Thank you for the opportunity. We'd love any feedback or any suggestions you have for all of us, but we're grateful to be able to present this morning.
Absolutely. Happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah. Thanks, Jared, Tim. And kind of a question. So have you formed a company then? I see it's Contagion Solutions. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. Is that an LLC?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And can you kind of describe a little bit what you would see as the best CEO candidate for you? Can you give us a little detail there?
You bet. We can talk about some of that. Really, we would look for someone that can help put everything together for us as far as the different aspects, help us with our manufacturing contracts as we look to really bring our price point down from a manufacturing standpoint, to help us with the marketing and sales help. You know, we looked at distribution models, which is fairly common in our anesthesia world with the smaller regional distributors, but also, you know, versus a licensing model. So someone who can help us, you know, drive those, make those connections, solidify those contracts with us, and also then open us up to the international scene as we look at solidifying our patents internationally, but looking at what would, you know, manufacturing and distribution and sales look at the international level as well. then also just that business management expertise that can help us improve and increase our timeliness as we in our race for first to market. You saw the competition there. There's no one else in this space beyond those, and we feel like we're ahead of them. So we want to continue that push in a very timely fashion as well. You know, we had an iteration we were happy with with a prototype, but we actually paused about 6 weeks ago because we felt we could make a couple further refinements so that someone would not come behind us and, you know, design around us if we released the product the way it was. So we are almost completed with that further process, and we feel like we're very close to release to market. We want and are looking for someone to continue to drive that forward for us and help us.
On the regulatory side, you mentioned 510K. How close are you, do you think, to getting an FDA approval?
It's a great question. I'm going to let Dr. Bridget Flynn answer that question, as she is our regulatory expert on that. Bridget, are you still on?
Yeah, I'm right here. So we have submitted the EUA, the authorization use for the emergency authorization use.
Right.
So sorry, I'm post-call today. And so anyway, that's been submitted. The turnaround time for that, they're saying 4 to 8 weeks. We are going forth with the formal FDA approval also, which takes a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. We anticipate, though, that the EUA for COVID is probably going to be active for several years based on the current pandemic.
Yeah, okay, very good. Yeah, it looks like there's some questions there. Robin, do you have the questions on the chat room?
Yeah, we've been, Ronald Link has sent a couple of questions. I'm just going to read it as it is. And I know that Jared has been kind of chatting with him through the chat, but it says, might have an application for the tent. Can you do a walkthrough version? Working with a medical device company that can help identify COVID and influenza up to 6 days before symptoms appear. Scan takes 2 seconds. We are putting these in around the world and placing a system Danish Crown in Denmark. They need a tent solution to scan their employees outside the plant. Would a large version of this tent be a potential solution? That's his question. It goes on to say, we scan the face, so maybe something here. Working with nursing homes and hospitals as well, this would have applications, might be worth a discussion. So I know that they're discussing back and forth. Jared had mentioned that they're definitely working on some multiple iterations. So if you wanted to maybe briefly talk, very briefly, about maybe some of that.
Yeah, thanks for the question. We are constantly looking to bring the portable, affordable negative pressure space everywhere. It would be great to chat about that. A word on size is that we spent a ton of time trying to figure out how can we maintain negative pressure while having a hand enter a negative pressure environment. And the 2 limiting factors are size and area and volume, as well as the suction capabilities that you have next to you. So it definitely is possible to have a variety of applications for this, but the 2 limiting factors, like I said, were size and suction. But we hope that as lightweight and the ability to set this up on a moment's notice, it makes it have a lot of wide-ranging applications. And so would love to talk to you more about that.
Yeah, and I would add as well, Ronald, thanks for the question. We have a number of iterations, proof of concepts that we have already developed and are continuing to work on. And like Jared said, it's all about volume and then what kind of airflow can you generate. So we've gone through the numbers. We have an idea. So something, a larger unit like you're describing, we looked at some of that already with like some of these field hospitals. Can you surround each cot or bed with an option possibly? What you need to do is just simply increase, the amount of exhaust and get the comparable motor size with that. So, we wanted to focus our energies on the tent for now, the disposable situation. Also that accesses suction that's already standard in hospitals across the US and the world. So that was the reason why we went that route. To do a larger iterations, you'd have to develop a different type of a system, but it certainly is feasible. So would love to talk more. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I think, this is Jim. What I'll do is, now that I have an idea you're looking for a particular CEO, I will kind of look out to our network and see if there's individuals that might match up with what you're looking for. So I'll be happy to send folks your way.
Thank you, Jim. We appreciate that. Thanks for the
Greatly
opportunity.
appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It was great being on. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
Yeah. This is Ron Link. I just want to make a quick comment too, that I'm working with some entrepreneurs that spend a lot of time in this space with medical devices and solutions and buying and selling companies. So if you want, we can make an introduction for that too as well.
Great. We'd love that. We
I
have
might
other
be able to provide some guidance.
That would be
Absolutely.
incredible.
Thank
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Appreciate that. Okay, if there are no other questions, thanks again. And we'll go ahead and get ready for our next presenter from the University of Missouri, St. Louis. This invention developed there relates to the resource management system of a computing network and addresses the weak and vulnerable aspects of the ever-increasing number of IoT devices that are located on the edge of networks. So Dr. Pan, if you'd like to get us started, that would be great. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity and thank you for your time in this morning. So my name is Jenny Pan. I'm a currently associate professor in Department of Computer Science, and this patent actually is very focused on my one of my research area, which is about the security of edge IoT systems by using and incorporating blockchain and smart contract technique. Next page, please. So the basic problems is that, as all you know, that right now, billions and even trillions of IoT devices could be connected to the internet for the next decades also. So you can imagine that all kinds of applications like smart homes, smart factories, smart transportation, smart healthcare, and smart cities. So these kind of visions are enabled by billions and trillions of devices. So it's great that we will have a lot of new features and services in the future, but also it means that a lot of weaknesses. So that these IoT devices is not a full scale kind of server. They are not PC. They have very limited resources in a lot of cases. So which means they are more vulnerable to all kinds of hacking and attacking. So that's why in recent years, there are significantly large scale, botnet hacking targeting at least weak IoT devices. So they turn it into large scale attack and cause significant financial losses to a lot of companies that are deploying these IoT applications. So our motivations is next slide, please. So our motivations is to fill this security gap by introducing the blockchain and smart contract in the context of edge computing. So the edge computing is something I haven't mentioned. It's because of the weakness of IoT devices. We need edge computing to provide the resources and computing and to run AI or this face recognition, voice recognition, or VR and AR surfaces that are very close to the IoT devices. So that's make it very complementary, which means that since IoT is weak, but edge server is relatively more powerful, they can help solve part of the problem. They can provide resources. So we plan to deploy this blockchain smart contract capabilities on top of this edge server that are very close to the user's premise and can provide relatively more resources to solve the security problem that at least IoT devices had. So we basically proposed a new framework called edge chain. So basically we incorporate this smart blockchain and smart contract capabilities into such an edge and IoT systems in the various settings of users' premise. Next slide, please. So the basic idea is we all know that maybe a lot of you know Bitcoin, right? So in Bitcoins, you have accounts and you have a balance of, you have transactions with various users and everything is recorded in that blockchain, right? So similarly, in our situations, the differences is that this is a permissioned blockchain. This is not a permissionless. Permissionless blockchain is like Bitcoin, right? But for permissioned blockchains, we are able to deploy this in a controlled version, controlled environment like enterprise, right? Like smart home, smart factory. So it's not a public, it's like controlled access. Not everybody can hack or access the system. But the similar things we introduce is we introduce a coin system that is associated to each of the devices in the network, which means that these devices connected to the network, they request a resource from the edge. They perform all kinds of tasks. They demonstrate all kinds of behavior. And this behavior can be observed by our edge server, which is basically a manager. And these managers will, can use machine learning, use AI data analysis to develop this kind of insight. And this coin system is more like, I can use this to, for example, I can use this credit-based management system to decide, for example, I saw some bad devices behavior. And then I can use this coin systems as the regulations of the IoT device behavior. For example, if some devices behave very bad, we can use dynamic pricing or different strategies to charge them in a faster way. We charge them more coins so that their balance will deplete sooner, right? Because of their bad behavior. But if they are behaving very well, then they will enjoy more benefit, right? So, and also we use this, and remember this kind of transactions, resource usage transaction, behavior transaction, are kind of recorded in blockchain for this logging or auditing purposes. And more importantly, this kind of ledger is kind of blockchain is very robust, right? So it's non-deniable. It cannot be manipulated and changed very easily. Unless you have like a lot of computing power that overwhelm the whole system's computing power, right? So, so it's by recording this, it's and the transactions are recorded to the blockchain. Then later on, we can do this, auditing and control, so to make sure that these devices, all the malicious behavior will be caught and be logged, right? And on the other hand, we introduce a smart contract to regulate the behavior. Once we find the behavior, bad behavior, we log the bad behavior. In the meantime, we regulate the bad behavior. So by using smart contract, smart contract is like a illegal obligations, like signed by, two party, right? The device party and then the edge server party is like, the provider and the customer, they have agreement. So if, say, one device is hacked and they turn into bottleneck and they maliciously try to abuse the resource usage, try to acquire more resources than they're supposed to, then they will be breaking the existing contract. And then the deployed smart contract in this environment will be, will be executed automatically. So you don't need any human intervention. It will be automatically executed to say, okay, I will charge you with more coins with this period of time, so that this regulation can be executed immediately, so that the better devices, they can be controlled, right? So next slide, please. So in terms of the market usage, actually it can be, we envision it can be used in any, IoT applications in smart homes, smart transportation, smart factories, smart cities, as long as you involve IoT devices and you need to control and manage these IoT devices, and you have many resources that you want to assist this IoT application at the user end. So for example, a lot of you know 5G, right? 5G is a very typical example that will provide more resources that are close to the IoT devices. Then, on the cell tower, 5G cell tower, they will have more resources to assist these IoT devices. And in the meantime, this cell tower, 5G cell tower, can be a very good position to deploy this blockchain and smart contract solution, because they have more resources, right? And they can manage this heterogeneous application, and they are close to the devices. So if they are not in cloud, and if they are in cloud, then there are some disadvantages, because running these blockchains in cloud, then between the devices and the cloud, it will introduce a lot of delay and large bandwidth, and all the data has to go through long distance. It can be devastating, but for the edge, it's definitely a very good scenario. And also, it can be deployed in all kinds of, critical infrastructure, like Amaran, like this smart grid, transportation company, and also they can be deployed by, this largest, service provider like Amazon, right? Amazon, Google, they are providing smart home, devices like Amazon Echo, like home speaker, right? Or home assistant, voice assistant. So they are typical example, but right now everything is managed. I mean, all these devices work with very remote cloud, and they manage everything by the cloud and by these powerful devices. But as I mentioned, they have some limit. But in the meantime, these Amazons, Googles, they are pushing their services to the edge, to the home, to the users' premise as well. So I believe a lot of industry company like not necessarily Amaran, but this oil, gas, this manufacturing, utility, and this company, they are kind of using the service provided by this Google, Amazon as well, because they are very powerful company. They have a lot of devices. There are a lot of talents, and they are trustable providers, right? So they are, expanding their market to industrial IoT as well. So industrial IoT is a big deal, and we believe a lot of future applications will involve a huge market, and the commercial product for sure. And at the bottom of this slide, you can see, it's just a tentative list of what the future applications can benefit from our solutions. There are many of them, and as you know, the IoT market is expanding very, very rapidly within the last few years, and it's continuing advancing. All right, next slide, please. So in terms of competitions, by the time we filed these patents, we didn't see any concrete solutions involving using blockchain and smart contract for the purposes of this IoT device management, for the resource management, and IoT behavior, modeling and profiling. We didn't see many. And also, actually, this patent is a part of my major research. My ambitions is to create a whole cycle, not just for use big data and AI to do IoT devices behavior modeling and monitoring, but also create a loop cycle, which means it's not just involve this observing, but also involve this synthesis and management. Everything can be automated. Everything can be empowered by machine learning and artificial intelligence. So the short message is, by the time we filed that patent, we didn't see much competition there, existing solution, and this area is still, changing rapidly. This landscape is not mature yet. So that's also mean a lot of opportunity, a lot of blankets, a lot of gaps is to be filled. And by deploying these edge chain systems, it's definitely at the bottom of the slide, you can see it lists a few benefits. So apparently better security, right? We control the device's behavior in a better way, and everything is automated. Everything has a legal binding consequence. It's recorded, right? And in the blockchain. And also it's a better automation. For example, you use this blockchain and smart contract, everything is executed automatically. No human intervention is required. And also better accountability. Obviously, if these devices is hacked and turned into malicious devices, then everything will be recorded, and which means that all the devices behavior, no matter if it's caused by the specific user or they caused by software error, software failure or something, it will all be accountable. We can later on check the blockchain record and logs and find out what goes wrong, right? And better robustness for sure, because of we use blockchain. Then if the hacker hack one of the edge server, but because we have a multiple edge server there, and each of the edge servers can be a miner for the blockchain, which means even they hack, one edge server, it won't cause any damage. Whatever they manipulate and change, it will not be accepted by others. So it means more robustness for sure. Next slide, please. So this is the summaries of the major advantages of our solution. So basically it's the framework integrating the new capability of blockchain and smart contract into the edge and IoT scenarios. And we introduce an internal currency system or coin system. So it is associated to each devices. Each devices will have a balance, and their better behavior will have a consequence, right? So this consequence can be enforced by smart contracts so that they can either enjoy more resources or less resources based on our management goal. We can deploy that kind of policy based on our own need or the customer's own need, right? And we have built a prototype, and we have done comprehensive experimentations and validations and evaluation. And the paper, we have published the preliminary work after we filed this patent, of course. we published this paper in the IEEE Internet of Things journal, which is the top tier journals in the IoT area. Next slide, please. And we have this patent filed in 2019, and this is a non-professional patent. So before that, in 2018, we filed a series of professional ones. So the protection date should be starting from 2018. So at that time, really not too many researchers and existing solutions are related to in these areas we are talking about. Next slide, please. So about the progress, so as I said, we have deployed a working prototype with extensive experimentations, and the results show that the security gain is significant. And the smart contract and blockchain, they are integrated, they work very well. And more importantly, that by deploying this edge computing, by deploying this blockchain, significant concerns is about the cost. So that's why, if somebody know Bitcoin, Bitcoin is, it is permissionless, right? So everybody can do, can connect it to blockchain, to Bitcoin, and do these things. So it's kind of relatively slow, and it's a flooding, right? It's a P2P network, so it introduces a lot of traffic and flooding. But in edge chain, when we deploy in a permissioned, enterprise scenario, and we test the cost of deploying this smart contract and a blockchain, and we find that the cost is really not that much, and it's perfectly affordable. Imagine that in the future we are using more edge servers to provide resources for IoT, to manage the IoT. So it's totally acceptable. That's what we found. and we have more detailed result in the paper. Next slide, please. So that's it, what we are looking for. So we are looking for a commercial partner. Maybe we need a real use case to be built to justify the next stage deployment. So we deploy these prototype in a controlled environment, but naturally it's not a full scale like industry IoT experiment. So it's there's still a real use case is needed to push these technologies to the real to the wide audience, to the market. And the university currently is seeking to license to a startup or established company to turn it into real product. So that's our current status. And next slide. Oh, okay, that's all I have. If you have any question, please feel free to ask.
Yes, Dr. Pan, you mentioned a commercial partner, and a question came up in our chat room there. Are there any concerns if the commercial partner that you partnered with was, say, an IBM, a large corporation who might try to absorb your technology, without compensating you, or kind of move away from you? Are there any concerns about the size of a corporation you might be dealing with?
Right. So I guess these things, I totally agree with you, because a few days back I read an article that a news actually, Amazon's, they have a tech fund kind of, they support a small company, startup company. They give them small monies to get their ideas, and then a lot of smart startup company found that once they share their ideas with Amazon, then Amazon use this idea to develop their own product. And it's happening, that's a sad thing. So that's why it's kind of tricky in terms of how to protect this idea, especially for this small company. That's
right. And then in terms of moving forward and doing some additional work, is there grant funding that you have available, or are you needing to license it into a startup or a company who would then fund that support back into your lab? How would you see that happening?
I believe, last time and before this meetings, Tamara from our universities, we arranged a few local, meetings, and we explore all kinds of possibility. And so one of the possibility is that, the university and the interested party, we can, start a new startup company.
Mm-hmm.
And then we, find a potential partner. We, sponsor this kind of, because they're transitioning from the lab, right? So right now our technique is in the lab, but we needed to transit to the real kind of use case, like a typical application. Then if we have such a channel, then it can be verified and then proved in a larger scale and real scale. Then we can later on generalize that to a lot of different areas. So the university, I believe the first stage is they are looking for licensing it to a startup or any other company or partner that has such a resources that can match this vision. And for me, this is just one of my research areas. I have a lot of exciting ideas, but and I do have an NSF project right now, and I have a small team. But if we want to make it transition to the real market, it's certainly require more resources. So that's what we are looking for.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Well, very good. Well, we'll now that we have an idea of what it is might be helpful, we can help push this out to others in this space and see if we can attract some further interest. So Again, I appreciate the
Thank you.
presentation today, and you have a pleasant weekend. Thank
You
you.
too. Thank you. Have a good day and have a good weekend.